The key for any political party that's trying to hold power is getting its voters to the polls. It's not complicated. But this simple act has always been a problem for the Democratic Party. On average, Democratic voters are much less likely than Republicans to vote. Many of them can't seem to make it out of bed in November. Democrats are also, surveys show, less likely to know much about the issues. They buy the bumper stickers, they don't read the books. For these and other reasons, getting Democrats to vote on Election Day requires enormous effort. Sometimes it requires financial incentives like walking around money or giving free cigarettes to the mentally ill homeless. Sometimes, under extraordinary circumstances, convincing Democrats to vote requires race riots and a nationwide fear campaign. Unfortunately, that's what we're seeing right now. The only way to understand the last 3 months in this country is with the presidential election in mind. This has been the most radical and ambitious get-out-the-vote operation ever staged in a democracy. Politicians are now saying and encouraging things that could easily destroy the country, things that could fracture the nation, divide our people forever, turn this beautiful, happy place into a permanent maelstrom of angry tribalism. That's happening now. Why? Well, only for one reason, so that Democratic voters will be angry enough to vote against Donald Trump in the fall. Whether he's aware of it or not, Joe Biden is leading this effort. Biden traveled to Milwaukee today to remind voters what a racist country the United States is. To make that point, Biden met with the family of Jacob Blake. He is, of course, the man who was shot by police in Kenosha, Wisconsin, after he apparently lunged for a knife, rather. One of the people Biden met with in Milwaukee was Jacob Blake's father, who was also called Jacob Blake. Blake Sr. is grieving, obviously. Imagine if your son was shot and paralyzed. You feel for him in that way. On the other hand, Jacob Blake Sr. is a very strange person to meet with if you're trying to make the point that racism is bad. Judging by what he has written online, Jacob Blake Sr. does not oppose bigotry. He's enthusiastically for it. Quote, "I'm with Farrakhan 100%, Blake wrote on social media last year. Days before Christmas the year before, Blake posted a picture of Jesus' face floating in a toilet bowl. Blake called white people crackers. He referred to African Americans who support Donald Trump as, quote, coons. He repeatedly attacked Jews. Quote, the same pink-toed Jews that control the interest rate control the media. They control minds and money. At one point, Blake accused the Jewish residents of Pittsburgh of participating in a conspiracy to fake their own persecution. Blake claimed Jewish people in Pittsburgh got advance warning before the synagogue massacre there 2 years ago. And then Blake wrote this, the week the Harvey Weinstein story broke. Quote, a cracker Jew can do whatever to a white woman for years. End quote. That's what Jacob Blake Sr. thinks. Naturally, he also believes that you are the real racist. Here he is at a recent demonstration in Washington. Watch.
We're going to hold court on systematic racism. We're going to have court right now. Guilty. Yeah. Guilty. 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 Racism against Trayvon Martin. We find them guilty. Guilty. Racism against George Floyd. We find them guilty. Guilty. Racism against Jacob Blake. Come on. Abdul Dawala. If I said the name wrong, Allah forgive me. Guilty. Guilty.
Okay, so the guy who denounces, quote, cracker Jews is now a civil rights leader in our country. But that's only possible because the Joe Biden for President campaign has decided that he is. Joe Biden's handlers knew exactly what Jacob Blake Sr. had written before they landed in Milwaukee today and met with him. But they never mentioned it, and of course the media never asked them about it. Instead, Biden elevated Jacob Blake Sr. to a position of even greater prominence in this country and even greater moral authority. You are now being lectured about bigotry by a Farrakhan acolyte who calls black people coons and puts pictures of Jesus in the toilet. But of course you are. This is the whole game. To the Democratic Party, nothing is ever about principles. It's always about votes. Democrats acknowledge no enemies on the left. Even the most violent crazies are valued members of their coalition. And that's why Joe Biden will never say a negative word about BLM or Antifa, no matter how many people they kill. But the past does not go both ways. Watch Joe Biden demand that Donald Trump denounce and attack those many thousands of Republican voters you're seeing every day on the streets with guns, setting fires, pulling down statues, looting Target. When will those Republicans stop rioting?
His failure to call on his own supporters to stop acting as an armed militia in this country shows how weak he is. Does anyone believe there'll be less violence in America if Donald Trump is reelected?
Are there words to describe how dishonest those statements were? This is lying of bewildering audacity, but Democrats aren't ashamed of it. They amplify it. Watch the latest Joe Biden for President ad. In it, the ad argues that America is so dangerous for black people that African Americans should be afraid to leave their homes. There's that much racism. Watch.
Why in this nation do black Americans wake up knowing that they could lose their life in the course of just living their life?
African Americans, Biden says, quote, wake up knowing they could lose their life in the course of just living their life. Imagine saying that. And by the way, Biden isn't referring to inner city crime, which is real and it's awful and kills many thousands every year. But Biden rarely acknowledges that exists. No. Joe Biden is talking about police murders. Joe Biden is suggesting that American police officers kill African Americans because they're black. What is this doing to the country when a presidential candidate says something like that out loud? It's hard to imagine a more divisive claim, especially since it is a flat-out lie. It's untrue. There are no data that show that's true, just the opposite. Last year, for example, the number of unarmed African-American men killed by the police was smaller than the number of Americans killed by lightning. But Joe Biden says it anyway. If you'll believe that, you will believe that Jacob Blake Sr. is a civil rights leader. Dov Hikind spent decades as a Democratic state assemblyman in the state of New York. He now hosts a radio show in New York. We're happy to have him on tonight. Mr. Hikind, thanks so much for coming on. So you're a Democrat of long standing. I don't know if you still are or not. You certainly have been a Democratic leader in the state of New York. You probably agree with the party on a lot of things. But what do you make of Joe Biden lending his moral authority and giving moral authority to someone like Jacob Blake Sr.?
It is pathetic. It is hypocrisy. It is a double standard. And people need to recognize that. I mean, it is just beyond comprehension. Someone who follows Farrakhan, the #1 anti-Semite in this country, someone who preaches hate towards the Jewish people, the Jews control the banks, the Jews control the media, the Jews control everything. And Jews are responsible for everything. Louis Farrakhan. And Blake is a follower of Louis Farrakhan, spreading his hate on social media to millions of people. So how, in God's name, does the former vice president go and meet with this individual, praise this individual? And I would like to ask a question. It was only a couple of years ago that Biden was vice president for 8 years along with Barack Obama. What happened to the country? What was Obama and Biden doing in terms of race relations in this country? I thought they solved all the problems. What happened? It is beyond comprehension. And I hope Democrats will wake up and realize this hypocrisy. They are endangering this country. People are afraid. People are afraid. People in my community asked me, is there a future in America? This is where we are today. Is there a future in America? This is the greatest country in the world. We're not perfect. No one is perfect. No country is perfect. No person is perfect. But this is the greatest country in the world. And what the Democrats are doing, yes, I'm still a Democrat, but I am ashamed of the Democratic Party. It is a betrayal of all the values that America is all about. It's pure, unadulterated hypocrisy.
The claim, I mean, I try to give people a pass on stupid things they say or have said in years past. And so it's a pretty wide strike zone. But to claim that the Jewish community in Pittsburgh had advance warning, that seems especially poisonous to me and especially crazy. Why wouldn't Biden's advisors, who are sophisticated, not all of them are evil, I'm not saying they are, but why wouldn't they say, whoa, 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 we can't meet with this guy. Come on now, this is too much. Why wouldn't they say that?
It's simple. They're cowards. They are afraid of upsetting the Democratic Party, you know, the radical left. They are an important part. You know, isn't it strange that Bernie Sanders, Tlaib, Omar, isn't it funny how quiet they are? Because there's a deal with Biden that Biden do what they want and everything will be fine. Tucker, in 1944, my mother and her mother and other members of the family were taken to Auschwitz. My mother obviously survived. My grandmother and other members of the family went straight to the gas chamber that very day. That's what hate does. Hate of the Jewish people. Just pure, unadulterated hate. Doesn't have to make sense. You don't have to explain it to anybody. And here we have Blake Sr., a follower of Farrakhan, and we're not talking about 10 years ago. We're not talking about 2 years ago. We're talking about last year and recent. Hate. He is a civil rights leader. He is the problem. I say he is guilty.
You'd think if, I don't know, President Trump met with a Klansman, maybe someone in the media would ask about it, but no one has. Dov Hikind, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Tucker.